Some time ago I asked to myself, how would the perfect keyboard be? Yep, I made a keyboard before, but it only helped me realize everything about keyboards was actually wrong. And keyboards are the perfect sample to the sacred, if it works, just don't touch it. Nobody has questioned their design, even though it's used by everyone every day without a fault. So in this video we're going to rethink it a little and get a tiny bit closer to what a perfect keyboard might look like. But first, a little bit of context. In the 70s, oh fuck, no, sorry, it was actually way back in the 1870s, the decade when the telephone was patented and the phonograph, the first machine capable of recording and playing back sound, was invented. That same decade, QWERTY keyboard layout was born for typewriters. QWERTY prevented the machine from jamming. Typewriters had a mechanism that swung metal arms up to hit the paper, and if you pressed nearby keys simultaneously, the arms would collide, and you just fucked up. The solution? Just separate most commonly used letters. A huge advancement for the time. And if you look closely, that same mechanism is why also the keys are staggered and never line up vertically, because the key movement traveled through the mechanism up to the top, where the type bars were, and that whole system needed space for levers and whatnot. And I'm talking about the 1870s. These were people who thought that growing a big beard would help them filter the black air they breathe in the factories. And here we are in 2025. Fuck, 2026 already? How depressing, dude. Well, and since IBM released the PC in the 1981, where keys obviously didn't jam anymore and there was no crazy mechanical linkage, we have still kept this nonsense. We're still using the exact same layout. Why? Because once everyone on Earth already knows how to type with a layout, you're not just going to go and change it, right? Or do you think you are the coolest kid on the block? Hey? Do you think you're cooler than anybody? Or what? Well, maybe I think I'm cooler than anybody. Maybe I think that I'm cooler than anybody and I'm going to teach QWERTY. Huh? Well, not QWERTY. Yeah, well, you see. And something else that makes absolutely nonsense. Put your hands on the table. If you are a regular human being with no weird issues whatsoever, you did a little something like this. Something doesn't quite add up. Clearly there's something wrong. And check the height of this thing. Some people are forced to use wrist rest because tall keyboards hurt them. That makes no sense, right? Just make them lower. Or am I missing anything? Well, let's start by fixing the layout. If we look around for inspiration, we can find some good ideas like... Hold on, one sec. Now. Ortholinear and vertically staggered layouts. Ortholinear means that keys are aligned both horizontally and vertically. And vertically staggered means that columns stay aligned, but each column is shifted up or down slightly, following the natural shape of the hand. Vertically staggered keyboards are technically more ergonomic, but for example, if you do a little gaming, the moment your hand moves away from where it's supposed to be, you lose all the ergonomic benefits, because your hand no longer matches the position the keyboard was designed for. And on the other hand, we have ortholinear that resonates with me much more because it's simpler. This dilemma actually reminds me of kitchen knives. Japanese knives often have very simple handles. If you look at them from the bottom, many are just basic geometric shapes. Meanwhile, Western designs often try to follow the shape of the hand, sometimes a bit too much. And you can try to match the hand as much as possible, but in the end every person's different and everyone will end up holding the knife however feels best in that moment. The Japanese basically concluded that it's better to have something versatile rather than squeezing out the last drop of ergonomics. After this hyperfixation, yeah, we're choosing ortholinear, obviously, this is my opinion, and it would really help if you tell me in the comments what you think about the choices we're making, you know, for the engagement. Anyway, back to hands. Turns out the problem has also already been solved. It's called a split keyboard, and it simply means having two halves of the keyboard that communicate with each other. This lets you position the halves however you want. You could even put a snack, your microphone, or a very obese cat in the middle. Keyboard height isn't really a problem anymore either, even for mechanical keyboards which usually use MX switches, and those are pretty big. There are now low profile alternatives. The most common ones in the hobby, and more importantly cheap, are the Kilchok B1s. There are also B2s, but they are a bit more expensive and not quite as thin. If you know anything about mechanical keyboards, you'll know switches come in several types. In this case, I choose yellow ones, which are linear and a bit heavier, which maybe helps with typos, but you can swap them for whatever you prefer. The idea is for the keyboard to be hot swappable, so if you want to change the switches, you can do it in minutes, really. I started the design with the layout, and after trying quite a few options, I ended up with this one. I tried to keep it as familiar as possible, but removing anything unnecessary. I made the modifier columns a bit thicker, so the keyboard still feels closer to a normal layout. And since I do play lots of games, I made the spacebar wider than the other keys. That way I can keep my hand on the WASD when I'm gaming, but still use the classic typing position for everything else. I also noticed the left side was going to be quite small, so to compensate I added an extra column with configurable keys. And I did the same on the right half. I couldn't give up on arrow keys, so I embedded them right here. And just above them, I added home and end, which makes navigating text way easier than usual. Now you might ask, why did you stick to QWERTY if you just said it's outdated and all that? Honestly, I don't think I'm capable of getting used to that many changes at once. Just switching to an ortholinear layout is already going to take some time. I'd rather experiment slowly, and if it makes sense to switch to Colemac or any other layout, I'll consider it. Besides, the keyboard is going to be 100% programmable, so changing it later will be trivial. Later we'll talk about the programming part. Based on the layout and everything else, I ended up with this design. I made it on Fusion 360, which I had literally never used before, so please don't be too picky, okay? Personally, I think the best way to learn something is simply doing that thing. That way when you finish it, it means you've already learned how to do it, right? I highly recommend it, it's way better than that TikTok thing the kids are doing. The final result isn't the most beautiful thing in the world, but I think it has its charm. The first thing someone who knows about keyboards might be thinking is, where's the PCB? Is this guy insane? For anyone that doesn't know, the PCB is the board that connects all the components together. Basically, the circuit itself. Even though it might sound crazy, a PCB is essentially just wires, but in a very practical rigid format. The thing is, a PCB usually isn't something you can make at home, and ordering custom ones from China can get expensive and require a minimum order quantity, which makes no sense when you can just use wires. Good old wires, and call it a day. In the keyboard world, this is known as a hand-wired keyboard, which means this keyboard in the nerd slang would be a split, low-profile, ortholinear, hand-wired, hot-swappable mechanical keyboard. As you can see, I tried to make it as thin as possible, and to keep it rigid, instead of making it hollow like most keyboards do, I made it solid. And then carved out a very tight cavity for the components, that way everything fits perfectly in place. As far as I know, nobody has done it like this before. You have to be a little original in life. Maybe the least robust part of the keyboard is the section that holds the board and the battery. Since I wanted it to be easily printable and removable, it didn't end up quite as sturdy as the rest of the keyboard. But between you and me, now that it's finished, I've already dropped it several times and it hasn't broken. Another thing I probably shouldn't say is that I actually designed the entire left side first, just to test that everything worked, and then made the other half, but let's pretend that never happened. To build it, we only need a soldering iron that was probably used during the Civil War, a screwdriver kit that cannot hold its bits, a 3D printer, and 2 workers with very little motivation to work. But just look at them, so cute. And, of course, everything the wonderful world of AliExpress can deliver to my door. I am telling you, China is the future. Anyway, now let's go, print everything and assemble. Well, here we have the final product finished. Not gonna lie, I've been using it for months now, cause this takes a lot of time. Also, editing video and all that is new to me. I have it connected with a USB, but it is also Bluetooth. I have put on a little bit of grip tape, just so it doesn't slip around too much. See that? For me, it's so cool that the components are seen through. It is the only keyboard I've been using, and everything's going so smooth. I'm also going to upload on the GitHub this keycap that I've just made. I don't know if you can see it. This keycap that is normally they are concave. This one is convex, and it suits me because I always press Ctrl like this. I don't know why. A little cookie for reference. Oh, got one. This is how it sounds. It could really sound better. I've not modified the switches in any way. It's not modded. Maybe I do it in the future. Above all, what I'm surely going to do in the future is give it some style, because this is just basic white PLA. And I would like to make a video about this topic, to put some decals or some patterns, anything. That's it. Maybe in the next video, maybe within 2 videos, but it's an idea I have, so that's it. And I've left out the programming part of it, which is actually pretty simple, but also fucking tedious. With CMK, you can create layers that you can activate and all that. You can also configure macros, although in this case, I didn't use them. And of course, you have to set up the entire configuration properly, following the documentation without messing the fuck up. Explaining all that would honestly require a separate tutorial video, just like in the old days. If you're interested and ask for it, I can make one, but I'm definitely not an expert. For anyone who wants to learn more or even build one themselves, I've left the GitHub project and the one for the keycaps in the description, and links to all the Chinese components I used. If you're watching this video months later, some of the links might be dead, but if you search on AliExpress, you'll probably find everything, no problem. And just so you know, this video is only the beginning of what I hope will be many projects. If you want to help me make a living from this and grow something cool, please support the video. Leave a comment, because I really need your feedback, and that's all. See you next time. Besitos.